Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm, and you are watching fourth part of What If Naruto Was Sealed for a Millennia. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
So, Naruto does have senjutsu after all. Zetsu took another look at Kokebeel's dead body much faster than he had planned. Only a few hours after he and the white Zetsu went to face Naruto, the dead man's body was brought back to him. Only now they were all dead bodies that his other white Zetsu brought back to him. That. Well, we don't know. He got a report from a white Zetsu. You don't know if he has senjutsu on his side. If he does, then how did Kokebeel die again so quickly? I gave him enough chakra to be on par with a cage, and a white Zetsu made him stronger to the point where his physical stats should have been on par with. Is that? Zetsu looked at Kokebeel's head from the back. A cut or stab. Hours before. I thought for sure this guy was dead. Naruto watched as Kokebeel flew into Kuo, and then he and a few copies of himself went after the man. This time, Naruto could feel chakra coming from the man. It was strange that he suddenly had chakra, but it was that chakra that let him know that Kokebeel was coming. Even without Sage Mode, he could tell that something strong was coming because he had cage-level reserves. As he chased the flying man, Naruto jumped from building to building. Naruto pulled out a knife and jumped on the Kokebeel clone flying at the back of the pack. He stabbed him in the back of the head. He jumped off of that Kokebeel before it even hit the ground and stabbed the next Kokebeel in the back of the head. Fly faster, my army, because war is coming soon. By the time Kokebeel said this, Naruto had jumped from one Kokebeel to the next and stabbed them all in the head, killing half of them. Kokebeel had never used chakra before, so he didn't even notice as Naruto killed clone after clone until only he and one clone were left. A white Zetsu on the ground was confused by what was going on. Only the original Kokebeel was left after a poke. First, I'll kill the Gremory girl and the Citri girl, and then their peerages. That should get that brat's attention. When something landed on his back, right between his wings, Kokebeel stopped talking. Blood started to come out of his eyes and nose, and his eyes rolled back into the back of his head. He fell to the ground a few seconds after the rest of the white Zetsu. As Naruto sat on top of him, a knife got stuck in the back of his head. Naruto scratched his head to try to figure out what was going on. How did this guy get chakra, and why didn't he try to sneak into town? If he hadn't flown here while firing all of his chakra at me, I might not have even noticed. Naruto didn't understand a lot of what was going on right then. More so, why this man didn't know how powerful he was. Most ninja couldn't feel chakra very well, but everyone could tell when a cage-level ninja used all of their chakra at once. Naruto looked around and saw that the dead Kokebeel clones were sinking into the ground and that Kokebeel himself was starting to join with the ground. What was happening? The time right now. Huh? Zetsu asked when the white Zetsu who was watching over Kokebeel told him the story. The man flew to Kuo using his chakra to increase his speed the whole way. He was so excited about his new power that he couldn't help but try it out. He was so full of himself that he didn't even notice that Naruto was right behind him and had felt him blasting his chakra at full power. He seemed to think that he could do anything now. But he wasn't. I didn't give him much power at all. All I did was give him a small boost and a little bit of stored chakra. I had over 100,000 white Zetsu, and when I fused him with a single one, he thought he was invincible? Zetsu asked as he looked down at Kokebeel, completely shocked by how proud this man was. He didn't give him a Sharingan or Rinnegan because of this. He didn't know how the man would act now that he had so much more power, but he was happy now. If he had given him a Sharingan or a Rinnegan, Naruto might have been able to use it right then. If Naruto had access to those powerful eyes, he could combine them with Sage Mode, if he had it, and become almost unbeatable. What do you think we should do with the bodies? White Zetsu asked the person in charge. Zetsu gave it some thought. Merge him with the bodies and give them to another white Zetsu to control later. We shouldn't waste this power, but don't bring his brain back to life. Zetsu said this with a sad face. He knew Kokebeel was going to lose, but he didn't think the man would be so cocky that he wouldn't learn from the last time he was stabbed in the back of the head. People during this time were wrong. At the very least, these people were wrong about the supernatural. They didn't seem to understand the importance of being quiet and killing from the shadows. They much preferred to fight in public and make a big show of it. He would have to choose people who knew how to be sneaky and wouldn't be caught off guard by an attack like this. The Zetsu network has found 50 people who might be able to find Naruto. We will watch them to see if they have the same flaws as Kokebiel, which caused him to fail. White Zetsu told his main group that they were making progress in finding strong backers. But after this failure, they had to cut the number down to people who would actually pay attention to what was going on around them. I wish we could find more people like Itachi or Nagato, who were always ready for sneak attacks, or at least people like Hidan and Kakuzu, who were immortal enough to never have to worry about them. That was true, said Zetsu. It would be much easier if they could just find some people who didn't look behind themselves and wouldn't get stabbed in the back of the head. There were some cocky ninja, but even the most cocky ones knew about sneak attacks and were trained to know when they were about to happen. We could use the Sephiroth Grawl to bring the souls of some shinobi who have died back to life so we can control them. White Zetsu told him about it. Excuse me? In the world, there are 13 Longinus, which are sacred gears with their own special powers. One of them is the Sephiroth Grawl, and we've started to watch a girl who can call up the souls of the dead, give them bodies, and control them. After our network found out about the Longinus users, we're keeping an eye on them all. White Zetsu could spy and find possible sources of useful information better than anyone else. Like finding out about sacred gears and then finding out that there are different kinds of sacred gears. With their network spread all over the world, it was easy to find every person who used sacred gear and then find the 13 people whose gears were different from everyone else's. We could get the Akatsuki going again. No, that wouldn't be right. We could only get help from Itachi and Nagato, but we don't know how much control this sacred gear has, and Itachi betrayed our goals. We can't control Nagato without Obito. Find the user and bring them here. First, we need to see if it's possible to bring a shinobi soul back to life and take control of it. Zetsu said this in a deep voice. It would help a lot if they could bring the souls of the ninja back to the world, but they would have to make sure they could control them first. If they couldn't control them, it would be best for them to use the people of this time to do what they wanted. Is it really that risky to call a shinobi? We can't summon a ninja if the sacred gear user can't control it. If the user's willpower isn't enough to control it, then all we're doing is bringing back the people who killed us. Zetsu said to some people in the network. It would be silly for them to try to save someone who would die in an instant if they did. If they died, all of their hopes and dreams would be over. Right. The more ninja there are in this world, the more likely it is that we will lose. When Zetsu said that, he was angry. They changed the history of the ninja, and even if those ninja remembered the afterlife, there was no chance they would help them kill the last ninja. The ninja who lived after their people were killed. By calling on ninja, Naruto would just add more people to his own side, which was bad. So, let the plan go? Yes. Watch the user, but for now, give up on the plan. Yes, let's just try to control the warriors of this time. Only one shinobi will need to be brought back to life for Mother's enemy, and we will do that when the time comes. Zetsu could only think of one ninja who could be called without risk, but that ninja wouldn't help them until the very end. It would be too dangerous for him to find out why he was being brought back to life, so he should only be brought back to life when he doesn't have time to find out. They could only summon the ninja they knew the Sephiroth Grawl could never control when they were close to winning. Seriously? Naruto was confused when he felt the same person coming toward Kuo for the third time in a row, but this time he was much stronger than the first time and the second time when he gained chakra. Now, the chakra felt like all of those clone Kokebiels put together, but it felt much more dead than it did before. Sirzex asked as he looked off into the distance, "Are you sensing something?" "The same thing I'm sensing?" Naruto had just told him that he had killed Kokebiel twice, and now he could feel a strong magic coming right at them. He looked at Naruto and saw that the boy was scratching the back of his head. "I bet he's out to get me because I killed the guy twice." Using the Zetsu. When you fused the bodies together, the white Zetsu that ate them turned into a beast. Zetsu asked to make sure he had heard that right. The story was pretty straightforward. They used the bodies of the changed white Zetsu to join the clones with the original. They wanted to give the fusion to a white Zetsu so that it could get the battle powers of all the fusions. It seems that the bodies of people from this time had a lot of anger and hatred in them. The hatred and spite of Kokebeel took over the white Zetsu, who became full of ill will. His name is Beast Kokebeel, and he's headed for Naruto. Zetsu would just let this happen to test Naruto and see if he had Sage Mode. It wasn't like a dumb animal could tell him anything about himself. With Naruto and Sirzex. His magic is at least 10 times stronger than mine, so this is how it feels to be on the other side. Sirzex rarely faced enemies who were so much stronger than he was in his normal form. He looked at Naruto, who didn't seem too surprised by what they could feel coming their way. Sirzex told Naruto, "I think we have about 3 minutes until he gets here. If you think you can handle it, I'll set up a barrier around the city. It will take about 1 minute to set up." Naruto gave a small nod. "I'll meet him outside the city," Naruto said. "For the fight, I'll push him into the ocean." He sat down, crossed his legs, and put his hands together. He shut his eyes and stopped moving completely. After a half minute of being still, orange rings appeared around his eyes. When Naruto's 30 seconds before the barrier went up were up, he stood up and showed Sirzex his Sage Mode for the first time. "I'm not usually a sensor without Sage Mode, but if this guy is strong enough for me to sense him, I don't think I have much a choice. It's annoying that I have to kill this guy a third time when I could be fooling around with Rias and her peers." Sirzex was almost taken aback when Naruto disappeared and quickly left the city. Kokebeel. Beast Kokebeel. He looked different now, and his skin was completely white. His hair had grown longer and went from black to white. His eyes were the color of blood, and the veins on his face popped out. All of his muscles were bigger and stronger than they had been before, and he was twice as tall as he had been before. Now, black feathers covered the bottom half of his body, and his wings had grown together and joined to the undersides of his arms. Just by running into trees, his body tore them apart. Uzu. Naruto's foot hit him in the middle of the face, right in the middle of his head. This threw him off balance. Before he went flying or started spinning around on his heels, Naruto grabbed him by the ankle. He threw Kokebeel in the direction of the water. "Seriously, I was being kind by killing a jerk like you without pain. And now you're a revenge-seeking beast." Naruto ran after Beast Kokebeel and saw that the wound on his face from the kick had already healed. He was still stunned by the kick when he was thrown into the water. Naruto jumped and landed in the water of the ocean. He then ran ahead of Kokebeel for a few miles, passing him fast enough to get out of any country that could be affected by their fight. Once there were no more countries in sight and all he could see was water, Naruto crossed his arms and stood still. The best thing to do while he waited for Kokebeel was to charge Sage Mode. With Sirzex. Sirzex was a little surprised when he sensed Naruto outside of Japan, a huge distance away. "Is he faster than lightning? He's already so far away from Japan," he asked. He could even tell that Kokebeel was flying toward Naruto, though he didn't know if it was by choice or not. Even though the barrier was around Kuo, he might have made a small mistake as things were. "You should make the barrier bigger. Naruto will try not to break anything, but Kokebeel could be a problem. Be safe instead of sorry." Using Naruto. Uzumaki. Beast Kokebeel floated on the water's surface and gave Naruto a death glare, but it was a wild, crazy glare that didn't have any intelligence in it. Naruto gave him a sad look. Naruto raised his sad fists and said, "This time, I won't let you come back to life. And with your new rebirth, I can't be as kind as a knife to the head." His opponent wasn't much more than a wild animal in a rage, but it would be hard to kill him without hurting him because of how well he could heal. "I'll make it as easy as I can." Beast Kokebeel rushed at Naruto with a light spear. Naruto jumped to the side and dodged the attack by a millimeter. He hit Beast Kokebeel in the side of the head, and his neck broke with a loud crack. Kokebeel went flying when Naruto punched him, and when he got back on his feet, he lowered his fists a little. His punch split the waves, making him have to keep his balance on the uneven water surface. Yeah, that regeneration is going to be a problem. Naruto ran up to Beast Kokebeel and punched him in the middle of the chest. As his fist went deep into his opponent's back and blood rushed out of his mouth, the shape of his fist was left behind. Naruto put both hands up over his head and slammed them into the back of Beast Kokebeel. Beast Kokebeel jumped right into the water and went down deep enough to disappear. The water started to glow, and dozens of huge spears of light flew randomly out of it. They didn't even come close to hitting him. Instead, they went up into the air and exploded. Naruto gave them a look. Better not get hit by those. His power is at least 20 times stronger than it was before. And now I can feel that he's being fueled by something. Naruto jumped when Beast Kokebeel broke the surface of the water with a light spear in his hand. He hit Naruto a few times, then made a spear out of his other hand and hit Naruto wildly with both hands. These attacks are quick though. Without Senjutsu, it would be almost impossible to avoid them. Naruto could tell where each attack was coming from. Naruto was not hit by any of the blows, but he also didn't have a chance to strike back yet. Uzumaki. Uzumaki. Kokebeel's muscles swelled up and got twice as big, and his strength also doubled. Beast Kokebeel flew right after Naruto after he jumped back and put some distance between them. There were 1,000 light spears in the air around them, and they were all pointed at Naruto. When Naruto ran up and kicked Beast Kokebeel in the chest, sending both of them deep into the water, those light spears disappeared. Naruto couldn't breathe, and he looked at Beast Kokebeel even though he didn't need to. As Naruto punched Beast Kokebeel deeper into the water, he fell until his back touched the floor. The battle continued to get worse. The longer I fight him, the more power he gets out of me. He's either going to blow up or lose all control. Naruto saw that Beast Kokebeel's body was healing from the punches as fast as he was doing damage. Naruto's teeth clicked underwater, and he grabbed the person who was trying to kill him. He threw him up and away from the water. Beast Kokebeel set sail until he reached the clouds, and then he got back in control. Naruto flew at him and hit him in the face with his hand. Really wish I could fly. Naruto crossed his fingers as Beast Kokebeel flew even higher above the clouds. Make more Naruto's technique. Naruto made a clone of himself appear under him, and then he jumped off the clone and chased the enemy even in the air. He remembered that Pa Toad had taught him how to use clones as leverage to fight in the sky. It was a good trick he had learned in his training that he could use well, and the only reason he could remember it was because everything he had learned in his sage training was burned into his brain. Like this is how trauma worked. Uzumaki. Uzuzuzuzuzuzu. Shut up. Naruto hit him in the face, sending him even higher into the air. Naruto crossed his fingers and made another clone that he could jump off of. He went even higher into the sky to find Beast Kokebeel. Beast Kokebeel began to gasp for air as he tried to catch it. He tried to fly back down to a place where he could breathe, but he couldn't. He felt Naruto's hands around his ankles as he grabbed him and threw him even higher and farther from the air he needed to breathe. Beast Kokebeel crashed into the first place he saw. After him, Naruto fell to the ground. Naruto said to the man, "Come on, Kokebeel. Now I'll fight you with everything I've got. You better be ready for me." As he got into a fighting stance. They weren't anywhere that someone could get hurt. The hands of Beast Kokebeel were around his neck. He was scratching at his throat in the area around his body as if he couldn't breathe. Naruto looked at him for a moment and was confused because Beast Kokebeel wasn't even moving to attack him. Are you going to attack me? Naruto asked the man, his face filled with confusion. What was happening? Naruto is a fool because he slammed Kokebeel into the moon. Naruto has no idea that breathing is impossible in space. Kokebeel can't breathe in space, but Naruto can. Naruto ran over to Beast Kokebeel's side and asked, "Hey, did I collapse your lungs?" The man grabbed Naruto and tried to pull him away to show that he needed to breathe. Naruto gave him a few pats on the back to help him get rid of whatever was in his throat and making it hard for him to breathe. Beast Kokebeel was choking, so Naruto comforted him as he got down on one knee and tried to get the man to breathe again. Naruto blinked. Wait a moment. Soon after, Naruto used a knife to stab Beast Kokebeel in the top of the head, which made Beast Kokebeel go limp. Blood from his body was pouring out of his head. Naruto took his body in his hands and threw it into space while nodding to himself. Man, I'm stupid. I can't believe I was going to help him stop choking so he could keep trying to kill me. I guess I should go back to Japan and tell Searsex the battle is over. Naruto dropped Sage Mode and jumped towards Earth. He made a copy of himself and used it to slow his fall. If he started to fall too fast, he would make another copy and hop on it to slow his fall again. With Searsex. Searsex looked up at the sky and said, "What? What the hell?" He lost the ability to sense where Naruto was for a while, but now it felt like Naruto was slowly making his way toward Japan. From above. He gave Naruto a completely confused look as his chakra slowly came down from above. When Naruto ran into the wall, he stopped moving. Searsex said, "Better take that down," as he took down the barrier he had put up over the country. A few minutes later, Naruto flew away from him and landed a few meters away. Naruto picked himself up and gave Searsex a smile. Naruto told Searsex, "Okay, I stabbed Kokabeel in the head again when he was choking. I don't know why he started choking in the middle of the fight, but he should be dead for good this time." He didn't know what to do. Did he begin to choke? Naruto had his own idea about why Kokabeel started to choke. I know, it was weird. I think he got some water in his lungs when he went through the clouds, and when he hit the moon, it just got stuck there. Naruto doesn't know that you can't breathe in space because he's an idiot who doesn't know that humans can breathe in space. Clouds. Water. Moon. Naruto. People can't breathe in space. Searsex figured out what had happened much faster than Naruto. Naruto had his arms crossed and was frowning. Naruto gently put his hand on his friend's shoulder and said, "Searsex, don't be an idiot. Of course you can breathe in space. I just got back from the moon. Dude, do you need your head checked?" He just kept punching Kokabeel higher and higher. Since Kokabeel could fly, he figured he might as well keep going higher and higher until they were on solid ground and Naruto could really put some power into his punches. When you could put your whole body into a punch, which meant that your feet were on solid ground, the punch was much stronger. Searsex knew Naruto was an idiot, but he didn't think Naruto was so stupid that he didn't know people couldn't breathe in space. It was something everyone knew. Searsex blinked. "Hey Naruto, have any of your people been to space?" "No, why?" was an easy answer for Naruto. He was pretty sure he would know if anyone had been to space before, but he should have picked up a moon rock when he was up there. That would be a great way to remember his first trip to the moon. Why would we want to go to some boring rock like the moon? Naruto could see why his people wouldn't want to go to the moon. It wasn't that important. Searsex smiled at Naruto and said, "I take back what I said. You're not stupid about this, but you are an idiot. Naruto was able to breathe in space. Yes, I am. I'm going to take a nap. Tomorrow is my first day of school, after all." Naruto jumped and landed on the nearest tree. He wanted to sleep in a tree because he thought it would be a good way to unwind before he had to go to school. It was going to be so dull at school. He was lucky that he wanted a boring life. Death. As long as there was life, there would always be death, and the spirits of death would never leave until all life from an era was gone. That meant that death couldn't die unless it was killed by a living person or until all life was gone, at which point it had served its purpose and was done. I was born before the first shinobi ever took a breath, and I've been sleeping for a long time. I am the last shinobi still alive on this world, and my job is still not done. The Soul Reapers. Death itself crawled out into the world. It was very weak from not being able to eat for so long. Death could not eat the people of this time because he was not born to eat the spirits of this time. He used to be taller than any man, with purple skin and strong muscles. Now, he had no skin on his body, and his muscle fibers were showing. He had big red horns on his head, and white hair fell from his skull. A long, flowing white kimono hung from his body, which looked like a skeleton. He hadn't eaten in so long. He couldn't eat Zetsu because Zetsu was immortal and didn't have a soul. Zetsu was made by the goddess Kagaya. It wasn't his life that made him wander this world looking for a soul he could never eat. Of course, it would be the last Uzumaki, a group of people who used cursed masks to trap gods and demons inside. Death remembered the Uzumaki very well. He remembered how they used their fuinjutsu to make the mask that made him their slave, and he remembered the technique they used to make him do what they wanted. The dead demon-consuming seal made him do whatever they told him to do, at the cost of their souls, but the Uzumaki clan could still control him, even though he was a god of death and death itself. It would be an Uzumaki, of course. Not only that, but an ex-Jinchuriki, since Jinchuriki couldn't call him and he couldn't eat their souls because they couldn't call him. Because of his relationship with Naruto, he had to wait for Naruto to die naturally or join the world of the living. He had to get things done. He wanted to die, to be able to leave this world for good. He had been hungry for so long that all he wanted was to eat the last breath of man one last time before his life came to an end. He had a job to do. He had to eat something. There was only one soul left from his time left for him to send to the afterlife. It was the last living thing from his time. In a world where people could live forever, he could no longer just stand by and let a person die. Where there was a grail that could make you live forever, he had to make sure Naruto didn't find it and end up living forever. If that happened, he'd never be able to do his job, fill his stomach, or end his own life. But he didn't have a physical body. To kill and eat Naruto, he needed a body that he could take over and fuse his spirit body to. Many people thought he had died, but he hadn't. Instead, his spirit had just joined with the last soul from his time. He had to find the soul that was most like his own, the one that best showed what it was like to die. It wasn't difficult to find. Easy, just go to the underworld and find the person who is surrounded by the most death. He did that, and now he was floating behind a being like that. The god Hades was the best host, and the two of them would get along best. You won't take. I'm Hades. When I'm done with your body, I'll give it back to you. Until then, sleep in my stomach. Death didn't care that Hades turned him down. He was an old spirit of death, and a god from the modern era couldn't stop him. Hades was sucked into his ancient mind, and the god couldn't do anything but roar in anger before he was silenced. Hades's body of bones started to grow muscles, and the Shinigami, the spirit of death, ripped off the god's fancy robes. He didn't need such fancy clothes, and they would only get in the way of what he needed to do. A scythe as a weapon? How? Useless. But it seems to have a special power. Okay, I'll use it to cook my last meal. Shinigami said as he threw the crown on his head to the ground. I don't need anything that Hades cares about for this fight. Golden chains just appeared out of thin air. The chains made it impossible for the Shinigami to move. You won't go another step. He felt like he knew the ghostly figure in front of him. It looked like someone he had seen before. The chains that were holding him down right now were called up by a dead person. He didn't remember that he was already in the afterlife. He could talk to the souls of the dead, and the souls of the dead could talk to him as well. Woman, you won't be able to stop me for long. I'll try to stop you for as long as I can. I will feed. I will enjoy the quiet of death, and Uzumaki Naruto's soul will be the last thing I enjoy before I go to nothingness. I will die when the last thing that keeps me alive dies. Nothing will stop me. Shut up and don't talk to my son. Also, don't even open your mouth, because your breath smells like death. Using Naruto. It seems like something very important is going on right now, but I'm not here to see it. Oh well. Naruto had finished telling Rias about Xenovia, and the red-haired princess had accepted her as a peer. Many people already knew about Kokebiel's death, but Rias wasn't one of them. He didn't have to know anything about who killed the man. He didn't like that he always knew when something bad was going to happen. He had a sixth sense for when bad things were about to happen because he had been stressed and put in danger for so long. He didn't know who, what, when, where, or why his life was going to be in danger, but he knew it was coming, and he knew it was coming soon enough that he should try to remember more of his techniques. Oh well. If something bad was going to happen, he might as well have fun until it does. I'm now a knight, Naruto. How did the two of you know each other again? He killed a fallen angel I was supposed to kill by stabbing him in the back of the head with a knife from a convenience store, and I was kicked out of the church for finding out a bad secret. Ah. Stuff about Naruto. When Naruto heard that, he just gave Rias a blank look. What in the hell did Naruto stuff mean? Okay, so he can breathe in space. Big deal. It's clear that his body can use hydrogen and dark matter in the air as a substitute for oxygen. Guy. Sirzex was wearing a spacesuit and looked at Ajuka, who was also wearing a spacesuit. Since Naruto took them into space, their helmets had radios so they could talk to each other. Sirzex wanted to show Ajuka that he was right, and what better way than to show that this old ninja could live in space. Ajuka was holding a life reader. It's strange that there's no oxygen on the moon, but there's a lot of energy there. Deep inside the moon, to be honest, there's a lot of chakra energy. Even though nothing could grow on the moon, Ajuka didn't think there would be so much life energy all around them. It had nothing to do with science at all. Science was not important to ninjas. They were ninjas, but the moon wasn't one, and the fact that it had such a strong life force surprised them. It seemed like the moon was filled with a huge amount of something. Naruto, how far down into the moon do you think you can go? Depends. Naruto made several copies of himself, and they came together to form a large Rasengan in his hand, with several smaller Rasengans spiraling like moons around it. I can dig a pretty deep hole with this, but those suits aren't needed, he said. Naruto, the sun's rays are about 1,000 times stronger on the moon than on Earth. Even if we could breathe, which we can't, the radiation alone would do a lot of damage to our bodies. Ajuka told Naruto what happened as naturally as he breathed. If they stayed calm and took steady breaths, they still had several hours of oxygen left. What is that? How are solar radiation and the sun's rays backwards? The moon doesn't have an ozone layer, which is why it's white. The constant radiation from the sun has bleached the moon's surface. The fact that the moon is white shows that we can't breathe here. Are you cold or hot though? Ajuka asked Naruto. Naruto tilted his head, looking puzzled. Not really, it feels normal to me. It's even stranger that you don't seem to feel the changes in heat in space. I don't know how to explain that with science. Ajuka spoke to himself in a whisper. He knew Naruto didn't mind the cold, but he didn't like it when things were too hot or too cold. Has your body ever been put under a lot of stress? Ajuka asked. Naruto used his technique to send it down. A tornado of chakra the size of a mountain started to dig deep into the ground and shoot downwards. Searzex and Ajuka were floating and standing on magic circles with the help of their magic, while Naruto called up a clone to stand with them while he dug deep into the moon's surface for them. A huge snake has eaten me. So the answer is yes, and your body seems to have a natural resistance to acid, so maybe your chakra gives you damage resistance not just to acid and elements, but also to radiation in general. Ajuka was doing everything he could to make sense of all the nonsense he was hearing. The only thing he could think of was that Naruto had so much chakra that most things didn't hurt him as much as they should. Searzex was acting like an arrogant jerk, and he wouldn't look at his best friend while they were talking. Since he knew that he would have to face the fact that maybe ninjas were just made in ways that don't make sense scientifically, he didn't say anything. Well, what is that method? Planet and Moon Spinning Death Ball is the name for now. The name of the move was told to them by Naruto. So, Planetary Death Spinning Ball. That's right. Naruto thought that name would fit much better than the one he came up with on the spot. The hole below them kept getting deeper and deeper, and sometimes they could see that Naruto had to make another attack to keep digging deeper. Ah, it looks like he got through. Since the clone was no longer needed, Naruto popped. The two people looked at each other. With stress. Made it through? When Ajuka asked why, he jumped into the hole. Inside the moon. Holy, everything. When Searzex saw a whole new world inside the moon, his mouth dropped open. It had life and everything. There were fruit trees everywhere, and animals were free to move around. Searzex took his helmet off. He did this by taking it off of his suit. Searzex put his helmet on his head quickly. He was still unable to breathe. In the moon, there is a sun. Ajuka looked at the sun in the moon, which was floating in the sky. There was a sky, clouds, and mountains in the moon. On the other side of the sky, more land, mountains, rivers, and oceans could be seen. The moon was full of life all the way through. This doesn't make any sense from a scientific point of view. Ajuka looked at every single reading. This place had a lot of life energy in huge amounts. Searzex grabbed his arm and pointed to a huge animal that was at least 50 feet tall and had the shape of a gorilla. Ajuka's jaw dropped when he saw an animal that shouldn't be possible either. He also noticed that the animal was giving off the same kind of chakra signatures that Naruto was. Cool. As he took in everything around him, that was all Naruto could say. Naruto, do animals in your time tend to be that big? They did, of course. The stupid question made Naruto cross his arms. That's nothing compared to some of the animals that lived on Earth. The snake that ate me was way bigger than that. There were bugs like toads, snakes, and slugs that were bigger than that thing. I think I even heard about 20-foot-long tigers. Naruto's memories were fuzzy, but he knew that animals where he came from could get pretty big. Then there was the mountain's graveyard, where animal bones the size of mountains were scattered everywhere. When I was traveling with someone, I saw them. Naruto couldn't remember who he traveled with for 3 years, but he could remember some things. He couldn't believe how small animals had become. In your time, humans were the most common species, right? We were, of course. Oh, that makes a lot of sense about how strong you are. Searsex could now understand that in a world where humans were only 1/100th the size of everything else, they had to be the strongest species to stay at the top of the food chain. Can I eat any of this stuff? Searsex asked as he looked around to see if the food was safe for normal people to eat. Naruto was already eating anything he could get his hands on. He didn't care if the food was safe or not. When he heard what Searsex had asked, he just raised an eyebrow. Ajuka was taking notes on everything he saw. He took pictures and wrote down what was said. Little things. Little things. Naked apes? I'm not naked, you fur-covered jerk. Come down here and tell me that to my face. Even though these clothes are worn out, I'm still wearing them. Naruto didn't like it when the gorilla looked at them and asked him a question. The gorilla and Naruto got into a fight. Naruto won, and the gorilla had bumps on its head and one of its arms was bent in the wrong direction as it limped away. Searsex put a magic teleportation circle on the ground to mark the spot as a place they could teleport to in the future. The hole in the moon began to fill up on its own, fixing itself, and the sun got brighter. Ajuka's jaw just dropped. What the hell? This doesn't make sense. Even the supernatural follows the laws of nature, but none of this makes sense. How does gravity work here? The sun is above us and the earth is that way, but this doesn't make any scientific sense. Ajuka's mind was starting to shut down everything that wasn't going to help him figure out how all of this could be inside the moon. Inside the moon, not on it. Ah, I think I remember something. When the moon hit Earth and killed all of my people, I remember feeling like the moon was being controlled by something, but that something died in the crash. Naruto didn't forget that little fact. Naruto pointed up to where the sun was. I remember feeling that thing control the moon, and that thing was being controlled by a person. Naruto remembered now that he had felt it. The moon was turned into a weapon? Naruto, did your people make the moon? Ajuka felt something terrible start to form in the pit of his stomach. He looked at Naruto, but Naruto just gave a shrug. Ajuka only asked because he could see the ruins of a big building in the distance, and he knew that building must have been made by something. Naruto gave a second shrug. I think I heard someone say that the sage of something something made the moon about 1,000 years before I was born. I can't remember who said it or if it was true. Naruto didn't remember much about his own past or the past of his people. It seemed to be a pretty common story among his people. Ajuka left after using the magic circle. Searsex grabbed Naruto and let them both use the circle to leave the inside of the moon together. Days later is a movie. This makes no sense. The mountain's graveyard has giant animals that aren't supernatural. The moon is full of life. There are ruins of ancient people who seem to have been human or human-like. It's not just Naruto who can breathe in space. Those animals and chakra-filled plants could all live. Ajuka had tried for days to figure out what all of that meant. Naruto's chakra was different from the chakra he knew existed in humans and yokai in the modern world, but it shouldn't be so different that Naruto could breathe in space and survive levels of solar radiation that would make any supernatural person sick. Naruto also seemed to have had a different body. The X-rays showed that Naruto's body had a unique second set of. Well, they weren't veins, but they were something. They seemed to move his chakra through his body while making spiritual energy, and his cells made physical energy. His very cells were different from those of a normal person. His cells could use chakra, physical energy, and spiritual energy, and they could also make them. Most magic from supernatural creatures came from spiritual energy. A fighter could train to use their life force, physical energy, are key to fight, but it was hard work. Naruto's body made spiritual energy on its own. Naruto's body made physical energy on its own. Naruto's body also made chakra on its own. What was fucking weird was that Naruto's body seemed to be able to naturally combine the three energies to make his chakra stronger and his techniques more powerful. His body constantly sent out small amounts of chakra from each of the 360 points on his chakra system. After more research, he found 8 gates inside Naruto that blocked even more of his own chakra. How? 1%. Naruto's body could only use 1% of his chakra because of those 8 gates. Both his chakra and physical abilities were limited to 1% of their full potential. It was shocking that his species could only use 1% of their full power because of how they were made, but they were still so strong. He thought that Naruto's body was so strong because it didn't have the same natural limits as a human body. Normal humans could only use about 20% of their brain power and could only use about 65% of their maximum strength. Ninjas. Ninjas could only use 1% of their true physical strength, and 2 of the gates in their bodies were in their brains. This meant that they had even less brainpower than a normal person. Ajuka. 1%. 1% Seersex. Ninjas can only use 1% of their true power. It doesn't make sense. How can they grow so strong when their bodies are so limited? They have a body like that of a god. Godlike? They can live in space, don't get sick from radiation, and are the most common species on a planet with animals 100 times bigger than them. Their bodies produce both physical and spiritual energy, plus chakra, and they can naturally combine these energies. They can do all of this, even though they can only use 1% of their natural abilities. 1% Seersex. Ajuka yelled and slammed his hands down on the table as he stood up. 1% of what they can do. What's the matter with you? Only Naruto is a ninja. Ajuka was told by Seersex that Naruto was on their side. That's the point. Can you imagine if someone made a clone of Naruto and took away those limits? We both know what the other factions are doing with cloning. Ajuka was scared to death by the idea. Ajuka broke his table. I guess he could either save us or kill us. Damn you, Seersex. But you're correct. I did some math, and we're lucky that he's as stupid as you were, because otherwise. Ajuka didn't want to think about what would happen if Naruto didn't help them. Or worse. If someone used Naruto's DNA to make clones, what would happen? Why did he have to keep doing this? Now, the goal of the fight should be to land a single hit that kills or severely hurts the opponent. The goal of sparring, on the other hand, is to train. When you spar, you try to take control of the fight and make it last as long as possible so you can find your own or your opponent's flaws. Naruto said this as he blocked 2 sword blows with kitchen knives that he had sharpened with wind chakra. Yuto and Xenovia fell to the ground after Naruto kicked them in the face with one leg. Hiya. Naruto poked Issei in the nose from behind, which knocked him on his backside. Naruto looked back at Issei with a smile on his face. As he did, Kaniko's shadow began to come down from above and hit him. He grabbed her ankle, which stopped her from kicking, and threw her down on Issei. After a while, they all got up. So Naruto jumped back so he could see everyone, and he looked at Rias, who wanted him to train with her peerage. She wanted to try out her new knight Xenovia and see what else was out there. Naruto, on the other hand, looked at his jacket and saw that one of the sleeves was torn off because he had hit Issei with Kaniko too hard. Damn wet paper. Naruto's mind started to sweat, and he tore off the rest of his sleeves and threw them on the ground. He grabbed Yuto's sword with both hands and twisted it out of his grasp. Naruto grabbed the sword and hit Yuto in the head with the handle. He then knocked Xenovia's durandal out of her hands and stuck it into a nearby tree. He kicked her in the side of the head and pushed her on top of Yuto. Boost. He threw the sword he was holding in front of him. Eep. Issei jumped when the sword stabbed him right next to his crotch, stopping him from moving forward. Dude. Kaniko ran up to him and hit him in the middle of the chest. He fought back by hitting her forearm with his fist, which sent her fist flying to the side of his chest. He gave her a short punch to the cheek, which threw her off balance just a bit. Then, he used the arm he used to counter her to hook around her arm. He knocked her off her feet, put both of his knees into her stomcha, and pushed her down hard enough into the dirt to make a Kaniko-shaped mark. Goo. Don't put all of your power into every strike. Only put power into strikes that are meant to hurt, and don't attack with all your power when you don't know if it will hit. First, I threw Kaniko off balance, then I punched her in the face to throw her off even more, and then I made her rear end eat some dirt. Naruto got off Kaniko and gave her a quick dusting. She rolled out of her hole and grabbed her stomach as she tried to catch her breath. His blow had really knocked all of the air out of her lungs, making it hard for her to breathe and hurting her. Naruto knelt down and started patting her back. Yuto and Xenovia got up and got their swords. They were also ready to keep training. When Kaniko got her breath back, she put up her hand to stop him. Thanks. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you guys suffer. I'm going to hurt you a little though. Then Naruto punched Kaniko in the face so hard that she flew away. Still, it wasn't hard enough to knock her out. She fell a few meters away and landed on her feet with a bloody nose. Ow. Don't do what I just did, and try not to send them flying unless you're fast enough to catch up to them before they land on their feet. All you're doing is giving them a chance to get away from you and get some space. If you can get to them before they land, go for it. If you can't, give them some body blows. Body blows? Issei asked with an eyebrow raised. He was hit right in the middle of the stomach by Naruto's fist, and he fell over. He didn't go flying, because the punch hit him right in the middle of his body. He felt the blow so hard that it shook him to his bones. It was a strong enough hit to send him flying, but all of that power went into making him hurt as much as possible. Are you all right? Issei fell to his knees, and Naruto leaned down next to him and asked. The boy was in even worse shape than Kaneko, and it was clear. Naruto took his bottle of water off his hip and gave it to Issei. Take a few sips and come back to training when you can breathe better. Naruto got up and ran to where Zeno and Yuto were. Yuto put his sword up to defend himself. He was all set. I don't really use swords, I prefer fists, so I think you two would be better off learning from someone else. But here's what I suggest. Naruto dodged Xenovia's swing by moving back a few steps. He kept moving backwards to avoid Xenovia's swipes, and Yuto ran towards him to close the gap. Still, he didn't back down. He didn't try to get an edge. If I swing, he'll take my sword again, I said. Xenovia is stronger physically, so I'll let her attack first. When I see an opening, I'll say. He got hit in the face with a rock. Naruto kicked a rock off the ground as Yuto looked at his arms and torso. Keep your eyes on your opponent as a whole, not just on one part of them. What your eyes can't show you, your ears can. You could have heard me kick that rock at you, but you stopped it. As he told Yuto this, Naruto kept trying to avoid Xenovia. In battle, hearing was very important because it could pick up on things that your eyes might miss. Can you hear me? Or nose, but without a great sense of smell, it doesn't really matter. Naruto crushed Xenovia's toes with his foot. Youch. Naruto slammed his hand into her chin and threw her into the air. He then grabbed her ankle and pulled her down into the dirt, putting her on her back. Kaneko ran up behind Naruto and grabbed him. She put her arms around him. I've got him. Kaneko blinked when she realized that she had grabbed a log that wasn't Naruto instead of him. She threw the log down, and everyone who had gotten up started looking for Naruto. Ears. Naruto was behind Kaneko when he kicked her behind, sending her a few steps forward. He touched his ears and pointed back. So she could grab him, it showed that he had heard her coming before the attack hit. More importantly, you are all kind of one-trick fighters. Issei uses boost to get stronger, Kaneko is your hard hitter, Yuto is fast with swords, and Xenovia is strong with swords. Maybe you should each learn something new. Always have at least 2 or 3 skills that you can use if you need to. Naruto said this as he caught Kaneko's mule kick with his foot. He didn't look at her underwear as he pulled her leg and lifted her other leg in the air. He set her down on her head and hopped several meters backwards at a time. I think it's fine to be a close-range fighter as long as you also have another fighting skill. I'm good at taijutsu and ninjutsu, but when I want to, I can be pretty sneaky and tricky. I mostly attack from close range, but I also have a few attacks that work from farther away. You're all pretty close together. Issei's arm was behind his back because Naruto grabbed his wrist and pulled it behind him. He dodged a sword blow while holding onto Issei and then kicked Issei so that he and Yuto would both fall to the ground at the same time. Wood. Yuto moved out of the way, and Issei fell to the ground on his own. Yuto then ran straight at Naruto at full speed. When Naruto saw that, he moved to the side and stuck out his leg. Yuto tripped over his own foot and fell to the ground. He rolled across the ground. Don't go full speed if you can't tell what your opponents are doing or if you don't know how to dodge. Most people can only see one thing at full speed. Going too fast in close combat can make you lose even faster. Yuto tried to get up, but Naruto sat on his back and stopped him. He teaches well. I'll bet that he learned most of these lessons the hard way. When Akeno saw that Naruto was teaching in a learned from mistakes way, she laughed. Most of the time, people who taught this way had made the same mistakes themselves at some point. Naruto grabbed a rock and hit Akeno in the right nipple with it. Ow. I mean, she isn't totally wrong. Naruto got off of Yuto and stood up, which helped Yuto get up. Naruto let Yuto get his sword back for him. When everyone was ready, the sparring started up again, and Naruto was still on the defensive. Until he chose to change. Yuto was the only one who saw what happened when Naruto hit Kaneko in the stomach with his fist. Then he ran forward and punched Issei in the stomach. After that, he kicked Xenovia in the stomach. Yuto wanted to protect himself, so he tried to jump backwards. As he did this, he raised his sword, but both his sword and his jump were too slow. He was hit in the gut with an elbow, and Naruto jumped back to where he started. All in a single blink. Ria saw a blur of movement as 4 of her servants fell to their knees and held their stomachs. Wow, you really saw that. You have good eyes. Naruto praised Yuto for how fast he was. He had almost enough time to move out of the way of the attack. You might have done one of those things if you had only thought about dodging or blocking. If you want to block, block. If you want to dodge, dodge. When you do both, it slows down how fast you can react. Everyone had been hit pretty hard by Naruto's punches and kicks. Kaneko, who was a wall of defense, was the first to stand back up and raise her fists. She ran toward Naruto and bent down, making herself even smaller. She made herself a smaller and harder to hit target, while her agility made it easier for her to avoid being hit. Naruto stomped his foot on the ground right in front of hers. The small hole his foot made was big enough for her foot to fall into, so he punched her in the face. She fell down even more, landing on her side. She put both hands on the ground and tried to kick him with both feet while she got up. He just took a step back as she flipped over and stood up. Where did Konoha's hide-and-secret taijutsu technique? Naruto was hunched over behind her and making a sign with his hands. Kaneko, he is going to use ninjutsu. Raise your guard up. Ria said her advice out loud. Death for 1,000 years. Kaneko. When everyone heard the name of the technique, they all yelled, but when they saw what Naruto did, they stopped and had no reaction at all. He stuck not 1 or 2 fingers up Kaneko's backside, but 4. Right up her skirt, so everyone got a quick look at her underwear. When Kaneko went flying, her eyes went from being scared to being shocked to being neutral to being pained. Her face hit a tree branch, breaking it. When she fell, she landed on top of another tree branch, with her hands over her underwear and her legs moving back and forth in pain. Ah. Why did that hurt so bad? He remembered how to spell the name of that method. Everyone laughs at this technique until it's used against them. I'm going to show you the 1,000 years of death, which is a technique that makes people really scared. I was able to remember the real name. Naruto got back up and blew his hair back. Issei had his back turned. Dude, it's just a method that works. The butthole is a weak spot. You do know that I could have put a knife or an explosion up there, right? I've done both to people, by the way. Naruto explained as he took one of the knives from the drawer. People turned white. It was scary to think about shoving explosives up people's rear ends, and it was even scarier to hear that Naruto had done it before. Why does he still remember that? Rias just asked him about his strange memory. Because you never forget the fear of the 1,000 years of death and the fear of what your opponent will shove up your. Naruto could feel Kaneko coming toward him. He took the punishment he was given. Kaneko kicked him in the face with both feet, and he went flying as he accepted his punishment. Her cheeks were bright red, and her hands were over her butt. She was both embarrassed and angry that she had to deal with that trick. She put her finger on Issei. Why didn't you tell him that? Because I'm not sexist, I'll beat up anyone, no matter what gender they are. You were also crouching to get a lower stance. I wanted to show you that when you do that, it makes it harder to avoid attacks. Naruto said why he had a good reason to use the technique. When you dropped your stance, you made it harder for people to hit you, but it was harder to avoid attacks. Your opponent could use your low stance against you if they could make themselves look smaller than you. Ah. Kaneko turned red when she heard the reason. When he put it that way, it seemed less strange. Of course, I plan to use it on all of you eventually, just to be fair and to teach you that you should always watch your back in battle. Ah. What in the hell? My fucking asshole. Yuto, Xenovia, and Issei were all sent flying when clones of Naruto appeared behind them and poked them in the buttocks with chakra. They quickly learned that just because Naruto gave them a break to catch their breath didn't mean they weren't still fighting. Kaneko felt better now. He kicked her in the head to remind her that she was still training and that she shouldn't break her guard. By the time the sparring session was over, Rias had a pretty good idea of where her peers needed to improve. Have some decency. Naruto was shouting loud enough to wake up other people in the building. Everyone in Rias' peerage, except for Issei and Asia, lived in the same apartment building. Even though he wasn't a peer, Naruto was also staying there because he and Rias were dating. He thought they were dating, but that didn't make it okay for Rias to cross the line. Surprise? Wow, when I woke up, I almost had a heart attack. I do like to sleep naked though. In my bed. The problem started when Rias got into his bed completely naked. Since there was no danger, Naruto didn't wake up when she got into his bed, and he also didn't wake up when she slept on top of him and hugged him all night. He didn't wake up during any of it, and when he woke up the next morning, he was surprisingly well rested. He slept well that night, and he was sure that having a woman with him helped. His heart didn't feel better when he woke up with a woman by his side. Thump. Ow. Rias held her by the top of the head, which is where he hit her with his knuckles. Even though it wasn't hard enough to hurt her, the hit made her eyes water. She didn't think he would be mad when he woke up. She tried to be seductive and wanted to surprise him. Rias' imagination. Hey, love, let's stay in bed. She wanted to wake up before him, and she did. But as soon as he opened his eyes, he threw her across the room like a spring. He screamed in shock and grabbed a knife she didn't know was under his pillow. She was glad he didn't accidentally stab her while he was sleeping. Next time, she would have to be more careful about getting rid of the knife. When he realized that it was her who had gotten into his bed naked, he calmed down a lot. Naked Rias. You can show a little seductive cleavage, kiss after 3 dates, and then peck after 5 or 6 dates. There's an order to these things, and you don't go to the bedroom until like the 8th date, unless you're planning a one-night stand, in which case you're a moron. Naruto put the tip of his finger where he had knocked on her head. He made her kneel down and pray because she had given him a heart attack. When she scared him like that, he could have killed her. I wanted to surprise you with something nice, and maybe we could have. How I feel, Rias. You should think about how your partner will feel if you sneak into their bed, take off your pants, and hug them. What you did is a clear case of sexual assault. Naruto told her how bad what she had done was. Rias would have been in a lot of trouble if he had been like most people, though maybe not most guys. Rias was pretty, so she could get away with a lot. However, if almost anyone else had done what she did, they would have been punished. By the law or by getting hit. If it makes you feel better, you can do something bad to me. Rias's body language changed, and she became much more seductive. Bonk. Ow. I'm not done yelling at you for what you did yet, so don't try to charm your way out of this. Ow. Rias got hit again, and this time she put both hands on her head and looked up at Naruto with confused eyes. When she brought Issei back to life as a devil, he was very happy to wake up next to her naked. At the time, she needed to be naked to heal his wounds the best. She would have thought Naruto would react the same way, since he was a pervert like Issei in some ways. She was surprised when it seemed like Naruto's strong sense of right and wrong was a more important part of what made him who he was. Then again, she did sneak into his bed naked, but Issei was weird because his reaction to waking up next to a naked stranger was not what it should have been. Maybe Naruto was the one who did the normal thing. Hi Naruto, I've got something you might like to see. Sirzex stopped what he was doing when he walked into Naruto's room and saw Rias butt naked on the floor with her head in front of where Naruto's crotch was. He raised an eyebrow and carefully looked to make sure Rias wasn't beating up Naruto. He did give a thumbs up to Naruto. Nice. Rias got into my bed naked, and now I'm giving her a lecture about how to properly scare me. When he saw that smile of approval, Naruto gave a deadpan look. Sleeping naked is a bad habit she got from her mother. Bonk. Don't freak out when you find out that your sister was found naked in a man's bed. Naruto hit Sirzex on the head and put him down on the floor next to his sister. You're supposed to be furious and protective. Rias and Sirzex were standing right next to each other. They looked at each other. Aren't ninja the best at seducing people? You're a good guy, and I'm sure you'd take care of Rias if something bad happened. Plus, she's a big girl who can choose her own men. Sirzex brought this up. He was old enough to know that it was stupid to try to protect Rias too much when it came to sexual things. They were devils and had no shame about their sexuality. Rias was just shocked to find out that a ninja was teaching the devils about right and wrong. Naruto groaned. Yes, but most ninjas don't spend all of their time being sexual or seductive. What we do on missions isn't the same as what we do at home, and most people don't make it through having sex with a ninja. Naruto walked over to the bed and lifted his pillow to see that there were more knives there. Rias was looked at by Searsex. The next time you do this, make sure to get rid of those. I'm planning to. Don't be in agreement. Double bonk. Ow. Searsex and Rias both yelled when they got hits to the head that were made stronger by chakra. This time, the blows were so hard that they made lumps where his fists met. Rias put up her hand like she wanted to ask a question. So if I didn't start out naked and sneak into your bed, this would be fine? Sure, that would work. Naruto finally agreed that what she wanted was okay. As long as she wasn't naked and didn't startle him when he woke up, he would be fine with her being in his head. The sneaky way she got into his bed was what made his heart beat fast. Then I'll just wait until he's asleep before taking him off. Bonk. I can't read minds, but I can tell what you're thinking by looking at your face. I bet you thought you'd wait until I was asleep before taking off your clothes. If you ever get into my bed dressed and I wake up to find you naked, I'll spank you. Naruto said this in a very serious way. That sounds hot. Searsex was thinking. That sounds hot, and I want it. Rias thought about this as she made plans to do just that the next time she had the chance. I can use this to get him to enjoy my body, I thought. Double bonk. The next day. Ow. Rias didn't like getting spanked by Naruto when he covered his hands in chakra. It hurt a lot more than she thought it would, and he didn't pull her pants down to make it more sexual. Instead, he made her put on pants and spank them while he hit her. 934. Ow. Rias yelled. At first, her groans when she got spanked sounded sexual, but now they just sounded like they were full of pain and regret. She had thought, or made the assumption, that Naruto would find her getting spanked to be sexual. No, he was instead making sure that every hit to her butt cheeks hurt as much as possible. He avoided going anywhere near her vagina like the plague. Every time he spanked her, he hit her in the most painful and least pleasurable places on her behind. Greya had apparently told Naruto that the Gremory family had a rule that if a servant did something wrong, they would get magically spanked 1,000 times. So this is what it felt like. Why do you make her wear pants? Rias soon found out why Naruto made her wear pants. Ow. 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 Rias found out that her butt was red and swollen after she got all 100 spanks. It hurt to take off her tight pants because they rubbed against her swollen booty. This wasn't hot, she said. I don't know, it was hot for me. Maybe we should do this every morning. Let's not. Rias wouldn't take off her clothes in his bed while he was sleeping. She would be happy until Naruto told her she could sleep naked in his bed, and until then, she would wait. Oh, Rias, what's wrong? Those pants are hard to get off, let me help you. Eep. When he pulled her pants down quickly, Rias jumped and put her hands on her butt in pain. The door opened and Akeno walked in. I want that. When Akeno saw Rias rolling across the floor, she licked her lips. She made sure that Rias's butt never touched the carpet when she did this. She could see that those cheeks were red and swollen, and she wanted to feel that for herself. Both breakfast and tea are ready. The message was passed on by Akeno. She was the one who made it. Bonk. As the queen of her peerage, it's your job to stop your master from doing this. Do your job, queen girl, and make sure Rias stops acting like a cheap whore. I'm still your cheap whore, though. That doesn't mean anything good. But I'll do anything you want. All you have to do is ask. Rias knew that people would think she was a prostitute, but this was her happy ending. She didn't care if Naruto raped her or did whatever else made him happy. She was fine with it, and she even encouraged it. Akeno pushed herself against Naruto. Hey. Well, if she won't do, maybe A few seconds later, Akeno realized that Naruto had put his arms around her and picked her up off the ground. As he turned her body with his own, her back started to curve. Ow. Ow. Oh whoa 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 ow. This hurts. Hee hee hey. Ow. Aw. Rias watched as Akeno's charm made him angry and made him want to hurt her. Good, she got a chance to save her behind. Are you getting wet because of this? When Naruto saw that water was dripping down Akeno's thighs, he let go of her. He took a step back, but she turned around and gave him a flirty look. Why did you stop? I was getting into it. She's both a sadist and a masochist. Rias told Naruto that Akeno was in a strange situation. She liked both her own pain and the pain of others. Naruto stared at Akeno with blank eyes and then walked away from her. What is it with women these days? Seriously. Was there a girl he could hang out with who wasn't gay?
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.